She said, "It's not what you think." I said, "Good, now you're both leaving," and she lost everything the night I came home early. I found 2 pairs of shoes by the door that did not belong to me, and in that moment, 20 years of trust cracked louder than thunder. My hands were shaking, my chest burning, and every memory I had built with my wife suddenly felt like glass under my feet. I stood there in silence for a few seconds that felt like hours. Then I heard her voice from the living room saying the words that destroy a person slowly. "It's not what you think." And with a calmness that even surprised me, I replied, "Good, now you're both leaving. You believe in kindness, truth, and second chances. Take 1 second to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories." I was not always a broken man. Once, I was the kind of husband who woke before sunrise, worked until dark, and still came home smiling because there was a family waiting for me. My name was Daniel, and for most of my life, I believed love was built through sacrifice. I worked construction jobs in winter winds and summer heat. I skipped lunches to save money. I wore old boots so my wife could buy a dress she liked. I missed nights out with friends so my daughter could have birthday parties with balloons and cakes. Every blister on my hands felt worth it because I thought I was building something unshakable. My wife, Elena, had charm that filled every room. She laughed easily, spoke sweetly, and knew exactly how to make people feel special. When we were young, I mistook that gift for loyalty. I thought because she smiled at me, she would stand beside me forever. We married with borrowed money and cheap rings, but I believed we were rich because we had each other. Years passed. Bills grew, responsibilities became heavier. I became quieter, more tired, more focused on surviving than speaking. Elena became restless. She wanted trips, finer things, excitement. I wanted peace, security, and a future for our daughter. Somewhere between my overtime hours and her growing disappointment, distance entered our home like cold air through a cracked window. Still, I trusted her. That was my mistake. The man in my living room that night was someone I knew, Marcus, a polished man with expensive watches and easy confidence. He had met Elena through a charity event. I remembered how she mentioned him casually once or twice, saying he was successful and connected. I had nodded without concern because foolish people often call trust a virtue when it is really blindness. When I stepped into the room, they both froze. Elena's face lost all color. Marcus stood halfway up from the couch, adjusting his shirt, trying to look dignified in a moment that had none. She rushed forward, tears forming instantly, saying there was an explanation, saying I was misunderstanding everything. But sometimes the truth is so obvious it insults you when someone tries to hide it. I looked at Marcus first, then at her. Then around the house I had paid for nail by nail, brick by brick, dream by dream. I did not scream. I did not throw punches. I did not beg. Pain had gone too deep for noise. I simply told them both to leave. Elena cried harder then. She fell to her knees, saying she loved me, saying it was a mistake, saying she was confused. Marcus muttered something about adults making choices. I remember laughing once, short and bitter. Adults do make choices, and they live with them. They left that night. The door closed behind them. The silence afterward was louder than any argument. People imagine betrayal happens in one moment. It doesn't. Moment you discover it is only when you finally see the damage already done. My daughter, Sophie, was away at university when it happened. Telling her was one of the hardest things I had ever done. She cried on the phone, not because her mother had left me, but because the image of family she carried in her heart had shattered. I told her not to choose sides. I told her to focus on school, but children always feel forced to carry the weight of their parents' mistakes. The next months were ugly. Lawyers, paperwork, dividing accounts, neighbors whispering, relatives pretending concern while collecting gossip. Elena moved in with Marcus almost immediately. That hurt more than I expected, not because I wanted her back, but because it proved how long I had been the only one inside our marriage. I lost appetite. I lost sleep. I lost direction. Some nights I sat in the kitchen staring at unpaid bills and family photos, wondering how a man can give everything and still end up alone. There is a loneliness that comes from being by yourself, and then there is a deeper loneliness that comes from realizing the person beside you was gone long before they physically left. But pain can either bury a person or rebuild him. One morning, after weeks of living like a ghost, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. Hollow eyes, bent shoulders, a face carrying shame that was not mine to carry. That day, I made a decision. If my life had collapsed, then I would build again the same way I built everything else, one brick at a time. I cleaned the house room by room. I threw away things tied only to lies. I repaired shelves, painted walls, opened curtains, let sunlight return where darkness had been living. I started walking every morning before dawn, then jogging, then lifting weights at an old gym where no one cared about my story. I began saving money with a focus sharper than ever before. Instead of spending to impress anyone, I invested carefully. I took extra contracts. I learned new skills. On weekends, I helped older neighbors with repairs for free, and strangely, helping others healed me more than helping myself. Months turned into a year. The man who had once dragged himself through each day now stood straighter, slept peacefully, laughed again. Sophie graduated with honors and hugged me so tightly I felt every broken part of me being thanked for surviving. She told me I had shown her what dignity looked like. Then life did something unexpected. It brought Alina back. I saw her outside a grocery store on a gray afternoon. She looked older than the years that had passed. Not physically old, just worn. Her confidence was gone. Her eyes searched the ground before they found mine. Marcus, I later learned, had lost much of his fortune in reckless deals. When the money dried up, so did the glamour. Their relationship, built on excitement and convenience, collapsed under pressure the way weak things always do. She approached slowly. Her voice trembled. She said she had made the biggest mistake of her life. She said she thought happiness was somewhere else and only understood too late what loyalty, stability, and real love meant. She said she had lost everything. I listened quietly. There was a time I would have melted hearing those words, a time I would have mistaken regret for love. But growth changes what your heart accepts. I told her something simple. She had not lost everything the day I asked her to leave. She had lost everything the day she stopped valuing what she already had. Tears rolled down her face. People passing by glanced at us, sensing pain without knowing the story. She asked if there was any chance to start over. The answer surprised even me with how peaceful it felt. No, not because I hated her, not because I wanted revenge, but because forgiveness and reunion are not the same thing. I had forgiven her long ago so I could move forward. But some doors